This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Pittsburgh to Scranton. It's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenwald, Senior Fellow with Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Mara Donnelly. Mara, welcome back.
Hello, Charlie.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Well, there's no shortage of new things to talk about in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with a new administration, and a new governor.
New governor, and he's really off and running, so that's great. He's ordering everybody back to work, back to the office. It's pretty interesting. See how it goes.
That's quite a change
to
order everyone back to the office.
Some are okay with it, some are not. So we'll see how this goes.
Well, someone who has their own office over at APSCUF is, of course, Ken Mash. Ken, welcome back. Ken, of course, is the president of APSCUF, the union that represents all the professors in the state system of higher education, and a frequent guest and our expert on higher education. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charlie. It's always great to be here, Mara. It's
nice
good to see you again.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, too. We have so much to ask about such a very important topic. Things seem to be changing by the month. What at this point looks like the future of the state system will be? There've been some challenges out there and there've been some changes. Could you address maybe the challenges right now that are facing the state system of higher education for Pennsylvania?
Sure. So we were 14 universities, now we're 10. 3 of the universities in the West combined into one, and 3 in the middle of the state combined into another one. So we have this consolidation that's ongoing, and of course it doesn't happen poof. There's a lot of complications that are involved with it. So we're still working our way through that consolidation while trying to give the best possible education to the students that we can. So that's a big challenge, and fortunately our faculty have been great about doing the work and going above and beyond. So we're looking for that to work its way through. Of course, we always have the challenge, as many do, about money. Mm-hmm. And money is, it's extremely important. I think sometimes there's a tendency to forget that our universities are state-owned universities. Ultimately, the responsibility of the state. They were created as state-owned universities, and they operate differently than other universities. We have to comply more with state regulation because we are state-owned universities. And it's also true that we don't have, for example, we don't have the kinds of funds that private universities have off the side because of private giving and things of that sort, because that's not the way that we have operated. So we're also facing the continuing challenges that came about largely because of changes that were put into place, and this was a bipartisan change that didn't really work for the system, about how new construction on the campuses would be done. And a number of our universities engaged in that construction. They did it at a peak point when there was an increasing number of students. And because of that, many of our universities find themselves still carrying large amounts of debt. And the universities are carrying large debt. And to service that debt, obviously money that's coming from current students or that should be spent on current students is going to service that debt. Mm-hmm. And that's really not fair to them, because it means that, one, they're being charged for decisions that were made long before they were ever at the university, and they're also being deprived of services where they may have gotten the benefit of that money because of that debt. And we're also looking at a situation, I think, where we've seen declines in enrollment, and there's a prediction that in a few years there'll be another pretty steep decline. So we've got to figure all of that out so that we can proceed, and so that we can also continue to do the excellent job that we've always done to be the universities that serve the working class in Pennsylvania.
So how long do you think these consolidations are going to take to be complete?
Yeah, well, I think that, whenever you're undergoing something that's major and
Significant, yeah.
it seems like a simple thing to say combine the three, but you have to remember you have three different universities with different curricula, different leadership structures, different policies, different climates, and I expect that it will take a number of years to totally get them integrated together. But I think the important thing is that the major steps get done quickly. They've been ongoing, and that they be finished off so that it becomes, the students can't even tell that
Good.
something has happened.
Will there be a cost savings ultimately?
Well, I've heard a lot of talk about cost savings.
I
It
know there
certainly
were some-
has not
Yeah.
saved money. In fact, it costs money up front
Right.
to do that. I don't think that there will necessarily be cost savings associated with that. This was, consolidation was not our idea.
I know.
And my predecessor, I think, was on here talking about it and really was not a fan of it. Nevertheless, what's happened is the two of the three universities in each gave up their accreditation. So it's not like tomorrow you can flip a switch back and say stop doing that. So we have to make it work. And I think my goal would be over the long term to get these universities healthy, to get all the campuses healthy, make them robust places that are attracting students, and then maybe start the conversation about how maybe it makes more sense to separate them out.
Ken, are there examples in other states, in other state systems, of a similar type of move, of similar type of attempt at consolidation?
I think it occurred in Georgia also, and even there, I believe they were asked about cost saving, and it didn't save them any money to do that. Now, there are some upsides to doing this. For example, there may be, for example, at Mansfield University, that because they were so small that they did not have a very broad curriculum, and this does give opportunities for students to take courses at the other universities online. But there's a real question about the delivery and how it's all going to work and what the proper balance of faculty is on each one of the campuses.
Well, we're heading right into, some people call it crazy season, but we're heading into budget season. And we talked a little bit about funding. I'm sure you'll be seeking additional funding through the legislature. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, but I'd like you to do it in the context of the overall purpose of the state system, which is to provide high quality education at the lowest possible cost to students. So one, are we doing that? And two, what's the budget process look like for you this year?
Well, I think that if you're looking at high quality education, I would argue that we continue to give a high quality education to our students. We're committed, my faculty is committed certainly to our students. It's becoming harder and harder as resources dry up.
Dwindle,
But
yeah.
and it creates some tension on the campuses, as you might imagine, because you can only ask people to do so much. There's just so much time in the day to do stuff. Pennsylvania ranks still 50, 49, 48 as far as funding for state universities. So the state has just not met its commitment. And we have supported over the years a number of different proposals, including the Pennsylvania Promise, which would give some funding dollars to students under a certain income level so that they can essentially go close to free to one of our universities, or a community college, by the way, or a state-related. They would get the same sum and be able to use it at a state-related university. We've supported that. We're hoping that some sort of Promise program can be funded in the state. I was talking about that debt. It sure would be nice if someone took ownership over that. That is, that it was not pushed onto the backs of the students, but there was some recognition that everything that we're trying to do is that much much harder because we're still saddled with this debt that exists. We got a pretty significant increase as far as our funding goes, but it's still, if we go back to where Governor Corbett was, like it got us
Still catching up.
Well, we got kind
With
of
cost of living,
level
yeah.
to where we were there, but that's not accounting for inflation,
Right.
and so we're still behind. So I just, it's you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to have these universities, which are essential, and all the data says that the jobs in the future are going to be jobs that are going to require credentials, that are going to require degrees. We need to make sure that we are educating students in Pennsylvania, and it should be affordable too, a good deal to come to Pennsylvania, because you should be able to get a high quality education at a lower cost than it would be to go to other places. And hopefully we could even attract young people from out of state, because we need an influx of people in Pennsylvania.
Well, in this movement of consolidation, Ken, there have been debates and questions about funding, about program cuts, about retrenchment letters, about enrollments. And then at the, I think at the center of all this is a question or an issue that you're quite knowledgeable about and quite well versed in, and that is, what is higher education? What is the purpose of higher education? Isn't the purpose of higher education to prepare our young people for life in the future, and to prepare society to be able to continue to go on? But isn't it also the preservation of civilization? And our universities have always preserved learning. So there's always been a Department of Latin. There's always been a Department of Greek and Hebrew and so forth. And you find that one of the first things that is disappearing in this new age of educational reorganization in higher ed are foreign languages, for example. How do we balance the need to balance the budget with the need to have effective higher ed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it goes to another, when you're asking what is the purpose of higher education, because I'm someone, this is me personally, who does believe that that higher ed does provide that important role of preparing people for their careers. And that is a noble mission, and we should embrace that and try as much as we can to make sure that our students get good jobs and have successful careers. But that's never been all that higher education is about. And this is a hard sell sometimes because it's complicated and when you go and try to explain it. But higher education plays a role essentially to make people more complete human beings. That is, to give them knowledge in various different background areas that help them be better parents, better citizens, better. It's not like you can't get it elsewhere, but that sort of is the role of the university, and we need to preserve that. Otherwise, if we will all just become trade schools, and I'm not bashing trade schools. We need trade schools, but we need to understand that there's a difference too. So we need to be able to do what we can to help people get good jobs. And by the way, those things are also not mutually exclusive, because it makes you a better professional when you have grounding in lots of different areas and you have different approaches to problems. Or even, say, if you're a nurse, to take these other areas and have background in them allows you to be a better nurse, because you can have conversations with people, with your patients.
I have a lot of friends who are nurses who got
So,
the liberal arts education in addition.
Yeah,
It makes a big difference.
It does make a big difference for people. So, that's the harder sell. And frankly, I don't think that, at the state level, the people who represent us, or even at our universities, they've sort of given up talking about that. And I would argue that they had to do a whole lot more talking about that aspect of it.
Okay, well, again, we're just
Goes by too
starting
fast.
and we're out of time again. I'm so sorry. Will you come back and tell us how your negotiations are coming with the Commonwealth in the near future?
I will do that, and thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, Ken. We'll be right